She trusted a promise that shattered like glass. He vowed to rebuild it, piece by broken piece. When Raina Mercer's brother abandoned her with empty words and a dying ranch, she learned that promises are just pretty lies wrapped in hope. But when a stranger with weathered hands and haunted eyes stepped into her life, he offered something impossible, to keep every promise her brother couldn't. In 1883 Colorado, some debts are paid in gold. Others are paid in blood, sweat, and unshakable loyalty. Stay until the end to see how this story unfolds, and comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The morning Raina Mercer's world collapsed started like any other lie, with hope. She stood outside the Wells Fargo office in Leadville, Colorado, her worn boots planted in 3 inches of March mud, her father's old coat hanging loose on her shoulders. The wind cut through the gaps in the wool, but she barely felt it. Cold was nothing. Cold was weather. What waited inside that office was something far worse, the death of the last promise anyone had made her. The sun hadn't fully crested the Rockies yet, and already the town buzzed with the kind of energy that made Raina's jaw tight. Miners heading to the pits, merchants opening shutters, women in clean dresses stepping carefully around the muck, everyone moving forward with their lives while hers teetered on the edge of ruin. She pushed through the door. The clerk looked up, a thin man with spectacles that magnified his disinterest. "Help you?" "Raina Mercer, I'm here for the wire transfer my brother sent. Should have arrived last week." His fingers moved across the ledger with the enthusiasm of a man counting grains of sand. "Mercer? Mercer?" He stopped, looked up. "Nothing here." Her stomach dropped. "Check again." "Ma'am, I checked." "Check again." Her voice carried an edge sharp enough to draw blood. The clerk sighed, flipped back 2 pages, ran his finger down the entries again. Slower this time, making a show of his thoroughness. When he reached the bottom, he closed the book with a soft thump that sounded like a coffin lid. Nothing. No transfer, no wire, no funds under that name. Raina's hands curled into fists at her sides. "He promised. $300. He promised." "People promise lots of things, Miss Mercer." The clerk's tone carried the weary sympathy of a man who'd delivered bad news 1,000 times before. "Doesn't mean Western Union can conjure money out of thin air." Behind her, someone cleared their throat, a gentleman waiting his turn. Raina didn't move. "When's the next check? Maybe it's delayed, maybe your brother spent it. Maybe he never had it. Maybe he lied." The clerk leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was doing her a kindness. "Look, miss, I don't know your situation, but standing here won't change what's in that ledger. If the money comes, we'll hold it. Until then," he gestured toward the door. Raina turned slowly, her vision blurring at the edges. $300. That's all she needed. $300 to pay the bank, to keep the ranch, to hold on to the last piece of her father that still existed in this world. Her brother, golden-tongued Daniel, always chasing the next big strike, had sworn on their mother's grave he'd send it, had held her hands in his, looked her straight in the eye, and promised. She'd believed him. God help her, she'd actually believed him. The door swung shut behind her with a cheerful little bell that made her want to scream. Outside, the street carried on like nothing had happened, like her entire world hadn't just splintered into kindling. "Miss Mercer?" She turned. The banker, Mr. Thaddeus Kowalski, stood 3 feet away, his suit immaculate despite the mud, his expression carefully neutral. He'd been waiting for her. Of course he had. "Mr. Kowalski." She forced the words past the tightness in her throat. "I take it the funds haven't arrived." "They will. Any day now." His smile was gentle, pitying, and absolutely unyielding. "Miss Mercer, we've extended your loan twice already. The bank has been more than patient. My father built that ranch from nothing. 40 years of work. Is not collateral for a loan 3 months overdue." He adjusted his spectacles. "I'm sorry, truly, but unless you can pay the full amount by end of business Friday, we'll have no choice but to foreclose. Mr. Harrow has already expressed interest in purchasing the property." The name hit her like a fist. Flint Harrow. Her neighbor to the north. A man who collected land the way some men collected poker chips. He'd been circling her ranch for 2 years, ever since her father died and left her alone with 400 acres, 60 head of cattle, and a mortgage she couldn't pay. Harrow wanted the water rights, wanted the timber, wanted every damn thing her family had bled for. And now the bank was going to hand it to him on a silver platter. "That's 3 days," Raina said quietly. "I know." Kowalski's expression softened, but his stance didn't. "If there's anyone else you can ask, family, friends, there's no one." The words hung in the cold air between them, true and terrible. Kowalski nodded slowly, tipped his hat, and walked away, his boots making neat prints in the mud. Organized, controlled, a man whose world made sense. Raina stood there, breathing in the smell of horses and coal smoke and her own failure. 3 days. 72 hours to produce $300 she didn't have, would never have, couldn't possibly. "Sounds like you're in a tough spot." The voice came from behind her, low, measured, with a western drawl that softened the consonants. She turned and found herself looking at a man leaning against the Wells Fargo door frame, one boot crossed over the other, arms folded loosely across his chest. He was tall, lean in the way men got when they worked hard and ate little. His hat was pulled low, shadowing eyes she couldn't quite read, but she caught the line of a scar running from his left temple into his hairline. His coat was patched but clean, his gun belt worn smooth from use. A drifter. Great. Just what she needed, some saddle tramp looking for a handout or a sob story to exploit. "I'm fine," she said flatly. "Didn't sound fine." He straightened, pushing off the doorframe with an easy grace. "Sounded like your brother made promises he didn't keep." "That's none of your business." "You're right, it's not." He stepped closer and she noticed his hands, scarred knuckles, calluses across the palms, fingernails clean but permanently stained dark from work. Working hands, honest hands. "But I was standing here when you went in, heard most of it through the door. Wasn't trying to eavesdrop, just happened." Raina's spine stiffened. "Then you know I don't have time for whatever you're selling." "Not selling anything." His voice was calm, factual, like he was discussing the weather. "Making an offer." "I don't need charity." "Wasn't offering charity." He tilted his head, and for the first time she got a clear look at his eyes, gray as creekstone, direct and unflinching. "I'm offering work. You need $300. I need a place to stay for a while, some steady meals, and something to do that isn't drifting from town to town looking for day labor. Seems like we could help each other." She stared at him. "You want to?" "What? Work my ranch? If you'll have me." "For $300, that's 2 months' wages for a good hand." "Then I'll work 2 months, or 3, however long it takes." He shrugged. "I'm not particular." Raina laughed, a short, brittle sound. "You don't know anything about me, about my ranch. For all you know, I'm a terrible cook and a worse boss, and the whole place is held together with spit and prayer." "Probably is," he agreed. "Most places are." "So why?" The question hung between them. Why would a stranger offer to work himself half to death for a woman he'd never met, on a ranch he'd never seen, to save a dream that wasn't his? The man was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant, like he was looking at something far beyond the muddy street and the gray morning. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight she couldn't name. "Because I know what it's like when someone breaks a promise they shouldn't have made. And I know what it's like to lose something you can't get back." He focused on her again, and something in those gray eyes made her chest tighten. "If he broke every promise, I'll keep everyone he couldn't." The word struck her like a bell. Not an offer, a vow. This stranger, this drifter with his patched coat and scarred hands, was offering to step into the hole her brother had left. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because somewhere in his past, someone had failed him the way Daniel had failed her, and he'd be damned if he let it happen to someone else. "You're serious," she whispered. "Yes, ma'am." "You don't even know my name." "Then tell me." "Raina. Raina Mercer." He touched the brim of his hat, a gesture so old-fashioned it almost made her smile. "Cole Maddox. Pleased to meet you, Miss Mercer." She should say no, should send him on his way because trusting strangers was how you ended up robbed or worse. But as she stood there in the mud and the cold, with 72 hours between her and losing everything, she realized she was out of options, out of hope. out of promises. My ranch is 7 miles south, she said quietly, along Willow Creek. You'll see the sign, Mercer Ridge. I'll be there at sunrise. I can't pay you now, not until sunrise, he repeated, his voice steady. We'll figure out the details then. He tipped his hat again and walked away, moving through the crowd with the quiet efficiency of a man who'd learned not to take up too much space in the world. Raina watched him go, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She'd just gambled her last chance on a stranger who'd made a promise. God, she hoped he was better at keeping them than her brother. The ride back to Mercer Ridge took 2 hours through terrain that would have been beautiful if Raina had the luxury of noticing. Pines crowded the hills, snowmelt rushed through a dozen creeks, and the mountains stood eternal and indifferent against the sky. She'd grown up here, knew every rock and ridge, every place where the trail narrowed or the wind cut sharp. This land was in her blood. And in 3 days, it wouldn't be hers anymore. The ranch appeared as she crested the final hill, a collection of weathered buildings huddled against the mountain's base. The main house, small but sturdy, built from lodgepole pine her father had cut himself. The barn, listing slightly to the left where the foundation had settled. The corral, the equipment shed, the chicken coop she'd patched so many times it was more patch than coop. Home. Or it had been before her father's heart gave out 2 winters ago. Before the debts came due and the bills piled up and Daniel rode off swearing he'd strike it rich and send money. Before promises turned to ash. She dismounted, led her horse to the barn, and spent the next hour doing the work that never stopped needing doing. Fed the chickens, checked the cattle in the east pasture, down to 53 head after she'd sold 7 last month to cover feed. Repaired a section of fence where the wire had snapped. Hauled water. Split wood. By the time the sun set, her body ached and her hands were raw, but the work was done. It was always done. She made herself supper, beans, cornbread, weak coffee, and sat at the table her father had built, in the house he'd raised her in, and let herself cry. Not long, not loud, just enough to release the pressure building in her chest since that morning. Then she dried her face, washed the dishes, and went to bed. If Cole Maddox showed up tomorrow, she'd figure out how to put him to work. If he didn't, well, she'd cross that bridge when it burned. Sunrise came cold and bright, painting the mountains gold and rose. Raina was already dressed, coffee boiling on the stove, when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. Her heart jumped. She stepped onto the porch and shaded her eyes against the glare. A single rider approached from the north, moving at an easy lope, silhouetted against the morning light. As he drew closer, she recognized the patched coat, the low-pulled hat, the relaxed seat of a man comfortable in the saddle. Cole Maddox. He'd come. Relief hit her so hard she had to grip the porch railing. He'd actually come. A stranger who owed her nothing had ridden 7 miles before dawn because he'd said he would. Miss Mercer. He reined in his horse, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes, and touched his hat brim. Hope I'm not too early. You're right on time. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Coffee's on if you want some. Much obliged. He dismounted with the fluid economy of someone who'd spent half his life on horseback, tied his horse to the rail, and followed her inside. The house was small, and his presence made it feel smaller. Not threatening, just substantial. Like he took up more space than his physical form required. She poured 2 cups of coffee, black and strong, and slid one across the table. He wrapped both hands around it, and she saw again those scarred knuckles, those work-hardened palms. Thank you, he said quietly. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the pop of the stove and the wind rattling the shutters. I should be honest with you, Raina said finally. This place is barely hanging on. The house needs repairs. Half the fences are down. I lost most of my herd to rustlers last fall, and what's left won't fetch enough at auction to matter. I'm $300 short on a loan that's due Friday, and if I don't pay, the bank forecloses and my neighbor gets everything. Cole sipped his coffee, his expression unchanged. I can't pay you now, she continued. Can't pay you for weeks, maybe months. All I can offer is a roof, meals, and the promise that when I get back on my feet, if I get back on my feet, I'll make it right. That's enough. How is that possibly enough? He set down his cup and looked at her directly, those gray eyes steady and clear. Because I don't need much, Miss Mercer, and because I meant what I said yesterday. Your brother made promises he didn't keep. I aim to keep them for him. Why? The word burst out of her, raw and desperate. Why would you do this for a stranger? Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, distant, like he was reading from a page written long ago. I had a wife once, Sarah. We had a farm in Missouri, nothing grand, but it was ours. When the war came, I enlisted, told her I'd be back in 6 months, that we'd build the life we'd planned. His jaw tightened. I was gone 3 years, and when I came back, he stopped, swallowed hard. She'd died the winter before. Fever took her, and I wasn't there. Wasn't there to hold her hand or tell her I loved her or keep the one damn promise that mattered. His hands curled into fists on the table. I've been drifting ever since, trying to figure out how to live with that. And maybe I can't fix what I broke. But maybe I can keep someone else from breaking. The silence that followed was heavy, full of shared grief and understanding. Raina knew loss, knew the weight of it, the way it sat on your chest at night and whispered that you weren't enough. I'm sorry, she said softly. Me too. He met her eyes. So here's what I'm proposing. You put me to work. I'll do whatever needs doing, mending fences, tending cattle, repairing buildings, fighting off rustlers, whatever it takes. And when Friday comes, we'll figure out together how to save this place. Together, she repeated, the word strange on her tongue. She'd been alone so long she'd forgotten what together felt like. Together. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have a deal, Miss Mercer? She looked at his hand, scarred, steady, offered without hesitation. A hand that had held a rifle and buried a wife and kept moving when most men would have stopped. A hand that was promising once again to catch her before she fell. Raina reached out and gripped it. We have a deal, Mr. Maddox. His handshake was firm, brief, and honest. When he released her hand, something in her chest unknotted just slightly. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the possibility of hope. Call me Cole. Then call me Raina. He nodded. All right, Raina. Where do we start? She almost smiled. The fence in the north pasture is down. If we don't fix it today, the cattle will wander into Harrow's land, and he'll claim them as his own. Then let's go fix a fence. They finished their coffee, gathered tools, and headed out into the cold morning. As they walked toward the pasture, Raina glanced sideways at this stranger, this man who'd ridden into her life with nothing but a promise and a past full of ghosts. Cole? Yeah? Thank you. He didn't answer right away, just adjusted his hat and kept walking, his boots crunching through the frost-stiff grass. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but certain. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work ahead. I know. And Harrow's going to fight us. I know that too. And there's no guarantee we'll win. She stopped walking and turned to face him, her chin lifted, her eyes fierce. Then we'll lose fighting, but I'm not handing this place over without a fight. Cole studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. No, he said slowly. I don't imagine you are. They reached the fence 20 minutes later. The break was worse than Raina had described. 30 feet of wire down, posts snapped clean, the whole section trampled by something. Cattle, probably, or maybe deer. Either way, it was a disaster. Cole knelt and examined the damage with the focused intensity of a man who'd repaired 1,000 fences. We'll need new posts, wire, staples. You have supplies? Some. Not enough. Then we'll make do with what we have and improvise the rest. He stood, brushing dirt off his knees. You know how to stretch wire? My father taught me. Good. Then let's get to it. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, the sun climbing high and bright. Cole moved with the efficiency of someone who didn't waste motion, every swing of the hammer deliberate, every twist of wire precise. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his instructions were clear and patient. Raina found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it. Dig the hole, set the post, tamp the earth, string the wire, staple it down, repeat. It was hard work, the kind that made your shoulders burn and your hands blister, but it was useful work. Work that mattered. By mid-afternoon, they'd repaired 20 feet. Raina paused to catch her breath, wiping sweat from her forehead despite the cold. "You're good at this," she said. Cole glanced up from where he was tightening a wire. "Done it before." "Where'd you learn?" "Missouri, Texas, New Mexico. Everywhere I've stopped, ranchers needed hands. Fences always need mending." He tested the tension, nodded in satisfaction, and moved to the next post. "You learn fast or you don't eat." "Is that why you drift? No place to stay?" His hands stilled. For a moment, she thought she'd overstepped, pushed into territory she had no right to explore. But then he resumed working, his voice quiet. "I drift because staying still hurts too much. Every town, every farm, every face reminds me of what I lost. Easier to keep moving." He drove a staple home with 3 sharp strikes. "But moving doesn't fix anything, just spreads the hurt over more miles." "Then why stop here?" "Because you needed help, and because, he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because sometimes you hear something in someone's voice that reminds you you're not the only one carrying weight. And maybe helping them carry it makes yours lighter." Raina's throat tightened. She wanted to say something. "Thank you, I understand, I'm glad you're here," but the words tangled in her chest. So instead, she picked up the wire cutters and moved to the next section. They worked until sunset painted the sky crimson and gold. When the last post was set and the last wire stretched tight, Cole walked the entire length of the fence, testing every connection, making sure it would hold. "That'll do," he said finally. "Won't win any prizes, but it'll keep the cattle in." Raina surveyed their work. 30 feet of fence that hadn't existed that morning, solid and strong. "We make a good team." "We do." He gathered the tools, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "What's next on the list?" "About 100 other things. But right now, supper. You must be starving." "Could eat." They walked back to the house as the stars began to appear, sharp and cold against the darkening sky. Raina cooked, fried potatoes, bacon, biscuits from yesterday, while Cole washed up at the pump. They ate at the table in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when 2 people have worked hard together and don't need to fill every moment with words. After supper, Cole stood. "I'll bed down in the barn if that's all right. Don't want to impose." "There's a spare room," Raina said. "It's not much, but it's warmer than the barn." "Barn's fine. I'm used to it." She didn't argue. He was giving her space, keeping things proper, and she appreciated that. "Breakfast at dawn? I'll be there." He stepped out into the night, and Raina sat alone in the quiet house, listening to the wind and the creak of old wood. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel crushing. It felt manageable, because she wasn't alone anymore. A stranger had kept his promise, and tomorrow they'd keep working. The next 2 days passed in a blur of labor. They repaired the barn's sagging roof, replaced rotted boards in the corral, hauled water, fed cattle, and cleared brush from the fire line. Cole worked from dawn until dark without complaint, his movements steady and sure, his presence quietly reassuring. Raina watched him, cataloging details. The way he treated her horse with gentle respect. The way he stacked firewood with precise care. The way he never wasted anything. Not food, not supplies, not words. He was a man who'd learned to survive with less, and that knowledge informed every action. On Thursday evening, with 1 day left before the loan came due, Raina sat at the kitchen table and counted her money, again. As if the numbers would somehow change, $47. That's what she had, $47 against a $300 debt. Cole leaned against the doorframe, his hat in his hands. "How much are we short?" $253. He was quiet for a moment. "There's a cattle auction in Leadville tomorrow morning. If we drove your herd there tonight, got them sold first thing, won't be enough. I've got 53 head, and half of them are too thin to fetch good prices. We'd be lucky to make 100. That's still 100 we don't have now." She looked up at him, this man who'd worked himself raw for 2 days and was now proposing an all-night cattle drive to save a ranch that wasn't his. "Cole, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "We made a deal, Raina. I don't break deals. Her eyes burned. Even when they're impossible? Especially then. He straightened, settling his hat back on his head. Come on, let's round up the herd. We've got a long night ahead. They worked through the darkness, driving 53 head of cattle through the cold and the shadows, pushing them along trails Raina knew by heart. Cole rode point, guiding them with quiet expertise, while Raina brought up the rear, keeping strays in line. The moon was high and bright, turning the landscape silver. Somewhere an owl called. The cattle lowed softly, their breath steaming in the frigid air, and Raina felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Determination. She'd fought for this ranch every day since her father died, fought the weather and the debt and the loneliness, but this was the first time she hadn't fought alone. They reached Leadville just as dawn broke, the town stirring awake around them. The auction wouldn't start for 2 hours, so they corralled the cattle in the holding pens and waited, exhausted and filthy and silent. Cole handed her a canteen. She drank, the water cold and clean. Thank you, she said quietly. For all of this. He nodded. We're not done yet. The auction began at 8. Raina stood at the rail, her heart in her throat, as her cattle were driven into the ring one by one. The auctioneer's voice rose and fell, calling bids, pushing prices. Some sold well, others barely fetched enough to cover feed costs. When the last steer sold, Raina did the math in her head. $132. She had 47 in her pocket. That made 179 total, still 121 short. Her vision blurred. They'd worked so hard, done everything right, and it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Cole appeared at her elbow. How much? Not enough. Her voice cracked. We're still over 100 short. His jaw tightened. He looked around the auction yard, his gaze sharp and assessing, like a soldier surveying a battlefield. Then he turned and walked toward the auctioneer's office. Cole? Where are you? But he was already gone. Raina stood frozen, unsure what to do. Around her, ranchers collected their earnings and headed to the saloons or the supply stores. The day was heating up, the sun bright and mocking. She'd failed. Despite everything, all the work, all the hope, all the trust she'd placed in a stranger, she'd failed. By end of business today, the bank would foreclose. Harrow would take possession, and Mercer Ridge would belong to someone else. 15 minutes later, Cole reappeared. His expression was grim, but there was something different in his eyes, something hard and resolved. Come on, he said. Where? The bank. Cole, we don't have enough. We do now. He started walking, and she had no choice but to follow. What did you do? Sold something. What could you possibly have to sell? He didn't answer, just kept walking, his stride long and purposeful, until they reached the bank. Inside, Mr. Kowalski looked up from his desk, his expression shifting from surprise to professional courtesy. Miss Mercer, I wasn't expecting you until this afternoon. I'm here to pay my loan. Raina's voice was stronger than she felt. She placed her money on the desk, $179 in crumpled bills and worn coins. Kowalski counted it slowly. This is significantly short of the required amount. I know. She looked at Cole. He stepped forward and placed a small leather pouch on the desk. The rest is here. Kowalski opened the pouch, and Raina's breath caught. Inside was a pocket watch, gold, beautifully engraved, clearly valuable, and a wedding ring, Cole's wedding ring. No, Raina whispered. Cole, you can't. It's done. His voice was quiet, final. The jeweler down the street appraised them. $125. Kowalski examined the items with a jeweler's eye, nodded slowly. This is acceptable. He made a note in his ledger. Your loan is paid in full, Miss Mercer. The ranch remains yours. The words washed over her like a wave. Paid in full. The ranch remains yours. She'd won. They'd won. But at what cost? Outside, she grabbed Cole's arm. That watch, that ring, those were from your wife. From Sarah. I know. You can't just... Cole, those are all you have left of her. His face was set, his jaw tight. I have memories. I have her letters. I have everything that matters up here. He tapped his temple. And here. His hand moved to his chest. The watch and ring are just things, Raina. Metal and glass. They don't bring her back, but they can save this ranch, and that matters. But she'd understand. His voice cracked slightly. Sarah always said promises mattered more than things, and I made you a promise. Raina's eyes filled with tears. This man, this stranger who'd walked into her life 4 days ago, had just given up the last physical remnants of his wife to save a ranch he had no claim to, because he'd said he would, because promises mattered. I'll buy them back, she said fiercely. I swear to God, Cole, I'll earn the money and I'll buy them back. No. He gripped her shoulders gently. They're gone, Raina, and that's all right. Some things you have to let go of to move forward. I understand that now. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. So she did the only thing that made sense. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight, this broken man who'd saved her with his own broken pieces. After a moment, his arms came around her, solid and warm and real. Thank you, she whispered against his coat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome. His voice was rough. Now come on, we've got a ranch to run. They walked back through Leadville together, the morning sun bright on their faces, the future uncertain but no longer impossible. Raina's ranch was saved, her father's legacy secured, and Cole Maddox, the drifter who'd promised to keep every promise her brother couldn't, had kept his word, at the cost of everything he had left to lose. The ride back to Mercer Ridge was different from every other ride Raina had taken in the past 2 years. The sun sat higher now, warming the mountain air, and though exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body, something lighter had taken root in her chest. The ranch was hers, the debt was paid. She could breathe again. Cole rode beside her in silence, his face unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat brim. She kept glancing at him, searching for signs of regret or grief, but his expression remained steady, focused on the trail ahead. If losing his wife's ring and watch had broken something inside him, he wasn't showing it. You didn't have to do that, Raina said finally, unable to bear the quiet any longer. We've been over this. I know, but Raina. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes calm. It's done. The ranch is safe. That's what matters. But those things were all you had left of her. No. His voice was gentle, but firm. What I had left of Sarah died with her. The watch, the ring, those were just reminders of something I can't get back. Maybe it's time I stopped carrying them around like they could bring her home. She wanted to argue, to make him understand the magnitude of what he'd sacrificed, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't a man drowning in regret. This was a man who'd made peace with a decision that would have destroyed most people. Then I'll make it up to you another way, she said quietly. However long it takes. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. You gave up everything for someone you barely know. That's not something I'll forget. Cole nodded slowly, accepting her words if not agreeing with them. They rode the rest of the way in companionable silence, the mountains rising eternal around them, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. When Mercer Ridge came into view, Raina felt something shift in her heart. It was still the same weathered collection of buildings, still worn and patched and barely holding together. But it was hers. Her father's dream, passed down through blood and stubbornness and sheer refusal to quit, and now it would survive another season. They dismounted at the barn, tending to the horses with the automatic movements of people too tired to think. Cole pumped water into the trough while Raina forked hay into the stalls. When the horses were settled, they stood in the barn doorway, looking out at the land stretching toward the mountains. What now? Cole asked. Raina considered the question. The immediate crisis was over, but 100 other problems remained. Fences that needed mending, buildings that needed repairs, a herd that needed rebuilding, winter preparations that should have started weeks ago. The work never ended on a ranch, it just shifted from one urgent task to another. Now we get to work, she said. For real this time, not racing against a deadline, but building something that lasts. I can do that. He turned to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, something resembling a smile touched his mouth. Where do we start? Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Cole woke before dawn, met Raina on the porch for coffee, and they'd planned the day's work while the sun painted the eastern peaks gold and rose. Then they'd dive into whatever needed doing, repairing the barn roof, reinforcing the chicken coop, clearing deadfall from the timber stands, riding the property line to check for breaks in the fence. Cole was a revelation. He worked with the steady competence of someone who'd done every ranch job imaginable. But more than that, he anticipated problems before they became disasters. He noticed the way water pooled near the equipment shed and dug drainage channels. He saw how the cattle favored the south pasture and rotated them before they overgrazed. He understood the land in a way that came from years of observation, not just knowledge, but it was the small things Raina noticed most. The way he always cleaned his tools before putting them away. The way he spoke gently to the horses, his voice low and soothing. The way he fixed the broken hinge on the chicken coop door without being asked, simply because he'd noticed it was broken and knew how to fix it. He was, she realized, the kind of man who saw what needed doing and did it without fanfare or expectation of praise. The kind of man her father would have respected. One afternoon, 3 weeks after Cole's arrival, they were working on the north fence line when Raina spotted riders approaching from Harrow's property. 3 men on horseback, moving with the casual arrogance of people who believed they owned everything they could see. "Company," she said quietly. Cole straightened, his hand moving instinctively toward the rifle strapped to his saddle. "Friendly?" "Doubtful." The lead rider was Flint Harrow himself, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes like chipped flint. He'd built his empire through a combination of shrewd business and ruthless intimidation, and everyone in the county knew it. The 2 men flanking him were his hired guns, rough-looking types with tied-down holsters and expressions that suggested they enjoyed their work. Harrow reined in his horse 10 feet away, his gaze sweeping over Raina with the kind of assessment that made her skin crawl. Then he looked at Cole, and something shifted in his expression, calculation mixed with wariness. "Miss Mercer," Harrow said, his voice smooth as oiled leather. "Heard you managed to keep your ranch. Congratulations." "Mr. Harrow," Raina kept her tone neutral. "What brings you to my property?" "Just being neighborly. Wanted to see how you were managing now that you've taken on help." His eyes fixed on Cole. "Don't believe we've met." "Flint Harrow. I own the land north of here." Cole nodded once, but didn't offer his hand. "Cole Maddox." "Maddox." Harrow rolled the name around like he was tasting it. "You're the drifter who convinced Miss Mercer to let him stay on. Heard about that transaction at the bank, too. Selling your dead wife's jewelry to save a failing ranch. That's either very noble or very foolish." Cole's expression didn't change. "Maybe both." "Maybe." Harrow's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Word of advice, Maddox, this ranch has been bleeding money for 2 years. Paying off one loan doesn't change the fact that winter's coming and Miss Mercer's herd is too small to survive it. Come spring, she'll be right back where she started. Only next time, the bank won't be so generous." "That's not your concern," Raina said sharply. "Actually, it is. When your ranch fails, and it will fail, I'll be the one buying it. So I have a vested interest in how this plays out." He leaned forward in his saddle. "I'm prepared to make you an offer right now, Miss Mercer. $500 for the land, the buildings, and whatever cattle you have left. That's more than fair considering your situation. The ranch isn't for sale. It will be, eventually. Why not save yourself the trouble and sell now?" "Because it's not yours to have." Raina's voice was steel. "My father built this place from nothing. I'm not handing it over to you or anyone else." Harrow's expression hardened. "Your father was a stubborn fool who died broke. Don't make the same mistake." Cole moved then, just a slight shift in his stance, but suddenly he was positioned between Raina and Harrow, his hand resting casually near his gun belt. It wasn't a threat exactly, more like a promise. "I think you've said your piece, Mr. Harrow," Cole said quietly. "Time you moved along." One of Harrow's men tensed, his hand drifting toward his holster, but Harrow raised a hand to stop him. He studied Cole for a long moment, reading something in the other man's stance that made him reconsider. "You're making a mistake, Miss Mercer," Harrow said finally. "But it's your mistake to make. Just remember, when this all falls apart, Don't come crying to me for help." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. They disappeared over the ridge, leaving only dust and the echo of hoofbeats. Raina let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "He's not going to give up." "No," Cole agreed. "Men like that don't give up. They just change tactics." "What do you mean?" "He tried intimidation. When that didn't work, he tried buying you out. Next, he'll try something else, something that forces your hand." Cole turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "We need to be ready." "Ready for what?" "Trouble, whatever form it takes." A chill ran down Raina's spine. She'd dealt with Harrow's pressure for 2 years, but it had always been passive: legal maneuvering, loan manipulation, subtle sabotage. The look in Harrow's eyes today suggested he was done being subtle. "What do we do?" she asked. "We keep working, keep building, make this ranch strong enough that he can't take it from you, no matter what he tries." Cole picked up his hammer. "And we watch our backs." That night, Raina lay in bed listening to the wind howl around the eaves and thinking about Harrow's visit. She'd known the man was ruthless, but seeing it up close, seeing the cold calculation in his eyes, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He wanted her land, and he wouldn't stop until he got it. Unless she stopped him first. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her angry. She'd fought too hard, lost too much, to let some land-hungry tyrant steal her father's legacy. If Harrow wanted a fight, she'd give him one. But she wouldn't be fighting alone. For the first time in 2 years, she had someone in her corner. Someone who understood what it meant to hold ground against impossible odds. Someone who'd proven, again and again, that his word meant something. Cole Maddox might be a drifter with a tragic past, but he was also the strongest ally she'd ever had. And God help anyone who tried to take this ranch while he was standing. The next morning, Raina woke to the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly and stepped outside to find Cole on the barn roof, replacing shingles in the pale dawn light. He'd been up for hours, judging by the amount of work already done. "You're starting early," she called up. He glanced down, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "Noticed some weak spots yesterday. Figured I'd fix them before the next storm." "You could have waited for help." "Didn't want to wake you." She brought him coffee and biscuits, and they ate breakfast on the roof as the sun climbed higher, painting the mountains in shades of amber and gold. From up here, she could see the entire ranch, every pasture, every fence line, every building. It looked small and vulnerable against the vast wilderness surrounding it. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Stopping here?" "You could have kept drifting, stayed free of all this mess." Cole chewed thoughtfully, considering his answer. "Regret's a funny thing. I spent 3 years regretting everything: the war, leaving Sarah, not being there when she died. Regret ate me alive from the inside out until I was just a shell walking from town to town with nothing to show for it. And now? Now I'm here, fixing a barn roof, drinking coffee with someone who needed help." He looked at her, and his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. "No, I don't regret it. For the first time since Sarah died, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. That's worth more than freedom." Raina's throat tightened. "It matters to me. You matter to me." The words hung between them, more intimate than she'd intended. Cole held her gaze for a moment, something unspoken passing between them, before he looked away and cleared his throat. "We should finish this roof before the weather turns." They worked through the morning, replacing shingles, sealing gaps, reinforcing joints. By noon, the barn was weatherproof for the first time in years. Cole climbed down, dusting off his hands, and surveyed his work with quiet satisfaction. "That'll hold through winter." "You're good at this," Raina said. "Better than anyone I've hired before." "Had good teachers. My father was a carpenter before he took up farming. Taught me to respect the work, do it right the first time." "Where is he now?" "Dead. Cholera took him when I was 16. My mother followed a year later." Cole's voice was matter-of-fact, stating facts without emotion. "Been on my own since. I'm sorry. Long time ago." He picked up his tools. "What's next?" They spent the afternoon checking cattle, riding through the pastures to count heads and assess health. Raina had 53 head before the auction, lost most of them to pay the loan, and now had 37 remaining. Not enough for a viable operation, but enough to rebuild if they were smart about it. Cole examined each animal with a rancher's eye, noting which cows were pregnant, which calves showed promise, which steers should be sold before winter. His assessments were quick and accurate, and Raina found herself deferring to his judgment more and more. "We need to increase the herd," he said as they headed back toward the barn. 37 head won't generate enough income to keep you afloat. You need at least 60, maybe 70. Can't afford to buy more cattle. Then we breed what we have and buy a good bull. A strong bull can improve the whole herd in one generation." He paused. "There's a ranch in Leadville that breeds Herefords, quality stock. If we pooled resources, we could probably afford a young bull." Pooled resources? "Cole, you don't have any money. You spent everything on, I'll earn it. There's timber work in the high country. Pays well if you're willing to work hard. I could sign on for a few weeks, bring back enough to buy that bull." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "You're not leaving." He looked at her, surprised. "It's just a few weeks. I don't care. You're not leaving." Raina's heart was pounding. The thought of him going away, even temporarily, filled her with something close to panic. "We'll find another way." "Raina, promise me." She grabbed his arm. "Promise me you won't leave." Cole studied her face, reading the fear there, the desperation. Slowly, he nodded. "All right, I promise. I won't leave." The relief that flooded through her was almost painful. She released his arm, embarrassed by her reaction, but Cole didn't seem bothered. If anything, he looked pleased. "We'll figure something out," he said gently. "We always do." Over the following days, they explored every option for increasing the herd. Cole suggested they could trade labor for cattle, work other ranchers' land in exchange for young stock. Raina proposed selling some of the timber on her property. They argued and debated and calculated, trying to find a solution that didn't involve Cole leaving or Raina going deeper into debt. In the end, they settled on a compromise. They'd sell enough timber to buy a decent bull and use the remaining money to purchase 3 pregnant cows. It wasn't ideal, but it was sustainable. And sustainability, Raina had learned, was more valuable than any quick fix. The timber crew arrived on a cold October morning, 4 men with saws and axes and a wagon. Cole had negotiated the deal personally, ensuring they'd only take marked trees and leave the forest healthy. Raina watched from the porch as they set to work, the sound of axes ringing through the mountain air. "Your father planted those trees," Cole said, appearing at her elbow with 2 cups of coffee. "I know, but he'd understand. Sometimes you have to sacrifice one thing to save another." "Smart man, your father." "He was." Raina accepted the coffee gratefully. "He would have liked you." "You think?" "I know. He always said the measure of a man wasn't what he said, but what he did when nobody was watching. You do the right thing even when it costs you. That's who he was, too." Cole was quiet for a moment. "I wish I could have met him." "Me too." They stood together, watching the timber crew work, and Raina realized something. This man standing beside her, this quiet, steady presence who'd walked into her life and refused to leave, had become more than just hired help. He'd become a partner, a friend, maybe something more, though she wasn't ready to name it yet. All she knew was that when he was near, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter, and when he smiled, those rare, genuine smiles that transformed his whole face, something inside her chest sparked to life. It terrified her. The timber sale brought in $230, more than they'd expected. Cole traveled to Leadville and returned 3 days later with a magnificent Hereford bull, 2 years old and strong as iron. The animal cost $150, a small fortune, but worth every penny. "This is Duke," Cole announced, leading the bull into the corral. "He's going to improve this herd considerably." Raina had to admit the bull was impressive. Deep chest, strong legs, calm temperament. Duke would serve them well for years to come. With the remaining $80, they purchased 3 pregnant cows from a neighboring ranch. The new arrivals brought their total herd to 40 head, with 3 calves expected in spring. It wasn't enough yet, but it was progress. November arrived with the first serious snow. Raina and Cole spent their days preparing for winter, stacking firewood, reinforcing buildings, ensuring the cattle had adequate shelter. The work was endless and exhausting, but they fell into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's needs, working in sync. One evening, after a particularly long day, they sat by the fireplace in the main house, too tired to move. Cole had insisted on coming inside rather than retreating to the barn. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and even he had limits. "Tell me about Sarah," Raina said suddenly. Cole looked up from the fire, surprised. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What she was like, how you met. She struggled for words. "You gave up her ring to save my ranch. I should know who she was." Cole was quiet for so long Raina thought he wouldn't answer, but then he began to speak, his voice soft and distant. "We met at a church social in Missouri. I was 19, she was 17. She had red hair and freckles and a laugh that could light up a whole room." His lips curved in a sad smile. "I was shy, didn't think I had a chance, but she came up to me and asked me to dance, just like that. Boldest thing I'd ever seen." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. We got married a year later, bought a small farm with money her father loaned us. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We had plans, wanted 5 children, a bigger house, a stable full of horses." His voice cracked. "We had plans." Raina reached over and took his hand. He squeezed back, grateful for the contact. "When the war started, I thought I was doing the right thing. Protecting our future, fighting for something bigger than myself. But all I did was abandon her when she needed me most." Tears glistened in his eyes. "She died alone, Raina, cold and sick and alone. And I wasn't there to hold her hand or tell her I loved her or to Stop." Raina moved closer, still holding his hand. "You were at war. You didn't abandon her. You were serving your country. Doesn't change the fact that I wasn't there. No. But it doesn't make you a bad husband. It makes you human." She squeezed his hand. "Sarah knew you loved her. I'm sure of it. And I think she'd be proud of the man you've become." Cole looked at her, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "How can you be sure?" "Because I see who you are, Cole. You're loyal and honest, and you keep your promises even when it costs you everything. Any woman would be proud to call you hers." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Cole's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a small gesture that sent warmth flooding through her chest. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me I'm more than my failures." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the fire burn down to embers. And when Cole finally stood to return to the barn, Raina felt the loss of his presence like a physical ache. She was falling for him. The realization should have scared her, should have sent her running, but instead it felt right. Natural. Like everything that had happened, the broken promises, the desperate gamble, the stranger who'd walked into her life at exactly the right moment, had been leading to this. December brought harsh weather and harder work. A storm swept through, dumping 2 feet of snow and taking out a section of fence on the east side. They spent 2 days in the freezing cold, digging out posts and restringing wire, their hands numb despite thick gloves. But they persevered. Always persevered. One afternoon, while they were hauling hay to the cattle, Cole suddenly stopped and pointed toward the tree line. "Riders, 4 of them." Raina's stomach dropped. She recognized the lead horse. Flint Harrow. They rode out to meet him, Raina's hand resting on the rifle strapped to her saddle. Harrow pulled up 50 yards away, his men fanning out behind him. Their horses stamped and snorted, breath steaming in the frigid air. "Miss Mercer," Harrow called out, "we need to talk." "Say what you came to say and get off my land." "Cattle have been disappearing in these parts. 8 head from my ranch in the last 2 weeks. Thought you might know something about that." Raina's blood ran cold. "I haven't touched your cattle. Funny thing, the tracks lead straight toward your property." "That's a lie." "Is it?" Harrow's smile was predatory. "Maybe I should bring the sheriff out here, let him take a look around. I'm sure he'd be very interested in what he might find." Cole moved his horse forward, positioning himself between Raina and Harrow. "You're trying to frame her. Set her up so you can take her land." "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Maddox." "It's the truth. You've been circling this ranch for 2 years. When buying didn't work, you moved to intimidation. Now you're escalating to theft and false accusations. Classic pattern." Harrow's expression darkened. You don't know who you're dealing with. Yeah, I do. I've dealt with men like you before. Bullies who hide behind money and hired guns because they're too coward to fight their own battles. Cole's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. But here's what you need to understand. This ranch is protected now. Try anything, and you'll regret it. One of Harrow's men reached for his gun, but Harrow stopped him with a gesture. He studied Cole for a long moment, recalculating. You're making a mistake, Harrow said finally. No, Cole replied. You are. Ride away now, while you still can. The two men stared at each other, tension crackling like lightning. Finally, Harrow wheeled his horse around. This isn't over, he called back. Yes, it is, Cole said quietly. You just don't know it yet. They watched Harrow and his men disappear over the ridge. When they were gone, Raina let out a shaky breath. He's going to come after us, she said. Hard. I know. What do we do? Cole turned to look at her, his gray eyes steady and sure. We stand our ground. Together. Whatever comes, we face it together. Raina nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. Together. As they rode back to the barn through the snow and the cold, Raina realized something profound. She'd started this journey alone, desperate and drowning. But somewhere along the way she'd found a partner. Someone who stood with her not because he had to, but because he chose to. And together, they were stronger than anything Flint Harrow could throw at them. The stranger who'd promised to keep every broken promise had done more than save her ranch. He'd given her something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. That hope lasted exactly 4 days. Raina woke to the smell of smoke. For a moment, still caught in the fog of sleep, she thought someone had started the stove early. Then her brain caught up with her senses and terror flooded through her veins. Smoke didn't smell like that, thick and acrid and wrong, unless something was burning that shouldn't be. She threw off the blankets and ran to the window. Orange light flickered against the darkness, and her heart stopped. The barn was on fire. Cole! She screamed his name even as she yanked on her boots, not bothering with a coat. Cole, the barn! She burst through the front door and ran across the yard, snow crunching beneath her feet. Flames climbed the barn's north wall, hungry and vicious, consuming the dry wood with terrifying speed. The horses inside were screaming, high-pitched shrieks of animal terror that cut straight through her soul. Cole emerged from the inferno leading his bay gelding, his face black with soot, coughing so hard he could barely stand. He shoved the horse toward the corral and turned back toward the flames. The other horses, he choked out. I'll get them. Raina didn't think, just moved. She grabbed a blanket from the clothesline, soaked it in the water trough, and wrapped it around her head and shoulders. Then she plunged into the burning barn. The heat hit her like a physical blow. Smoke filled her lungs, thick and choking. She couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, but she knew this barn by heart. 3 stalls on the left, 2 on the right, tack room in the back. Her mare was in the second stall. She fumbled with the latch, her eyes streaming, and hauled the door open. The horse reared, wild with fear, hooves flashing inches from Raina's head. She grabbed the halter and pulled, using every ounce of strength to drag the terrified animal toward the door. Behind her, something crashed, a support beam giving way. The whole structure groaned, settling deeper into its own destruction. Come on, girl, Raina gasped. Come on, move! The mare bolted past her, nearly knocking her down, and disappeared into the night. Raina spun back toward the remaining stalls. 2 more horses, just 2 more. Cole appeared beside her like a ghost, his shirt pressed over his mouth and nose. Get out! He yelled over the roar of the flames. The roof's going. Not without the horses. They split up. Cole went left. Raina went right. She found the neighbor's gelding, the one she was boarding for extra money, and wrestled him out of his stall. The animal was beyond reason, eyes rolling white, but she managed to aim him toward the door and slap his hindquarters. He ran. Above her, the roof timbers cracked like gunshots. She looked up and saw flames eating through the rafters, saw the whole structure beginning to sag inward. 10 seconds, maybe less, before it all came down. Cole, I've got him. Cole emerged from the smoke leading the last horse, an old draft mare too stubborn to panic. Go, go, go! They ran for the door. Behind them, the barn exhaled one final groaning sigh. Then the roof collapsed inward with a sound like the end of the world, sending up a mushroom cloud of sparks and ash that lit up the night sky. Raina and Cole stumbled into the snow and fell to their knees, gasping and coughing. All four horses were safe, milling nervously in the corral. But the barn her father had built with his own hands 40 years ago, was gone. Nothing left but a burning skeleton and memories turning to ash. "Are you hurt?" Cole's hands were on her shoulders, turning her to face him. His eyes scanned her frantically. "Raina, are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. You?" "I'm okay." He pulled her against his chest, holding her tight while they both shook with adrenaline and shock. "God, when I saw you run in there. The horses." I know. He pressed his face into her hair. "But if something had happened to you, it didn't." She pulled back enough to look at him. "We're okay. We're both okay." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. The barn was gone. All their tools, their tack, their winter hay stores, gone. Duke the bull and most of the cattle had been in the far pasture and were safe, but everything else they'd worked for was burning. And she knew, with absolute certainty, who was responsible. "Harrow," she said, her voice flat with fury. "He did this." Cole's jaw tightened. "Can you prove it?" "I don't need to prove it. I know." Knowing and proving are different things. He stood, helping her to her feet. "But you're right. This was him. Question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before Raina could answer, she heard hoofbeats. 3 riders appeared out of the darkness, moving fast. For a moment, she thought it was Harrow coming to admire his handiwork. Then she recognized the lead horse, Sheriff Tom Brennan. He reined in hard, his eyes taking in the burning barn, the soot-covered woman and man, the terrified horses. "What happened here?" "Someone set fire to my barn," Raina said. "You see who did it?" "No, but I know who's responsible. Flint Harrow." The sheriff's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Mercer. You have any proof?" "He threatened me 4 days ago. Said this wasn't over. Now my barn's burning. You do the math." "Threats aren't proof. Could have been an accident. Lantern tipped over, spark from the stove." "I don't have a stove in the barn," Cole interrupted. "And there were no lanterns lit. I checked everything before I bedded down for the night. This was arson." Brennan looked at Cole with the kind of assessment lawmen give to strangers. "And you are?" "Cole Maddox. I work here." "Uh-huh." Brennan dismounted, walked closer to the burning wreckage. The other 2 men, deputies, Raina assumed, stayed on their horses, watching. "Well, Mr. Maddox, unless you can show me evidence of arson, all I've got is a barn fire. Those happen." "Not like this they don't," Raina snapped. "Someone poured accelerant on the north wall. You can smell it from here, kerosene or lamp oil. This was deliberate." "Maybe, maybe not. I'll investigate in the morning when there's light. Until then, I suggest you folks get some rest." He swung back into his saddle. "And Miss Mercer? I'd be careful about throwing accusations around. Mr. Harrow's a respected member of this community. Making trouble for him without proof won't end well for you." He rode off with his deputies, leaving Raina and Cole standing in the snow, watching everything they'd built burn to ash. "He's in Harrow's pocket," Raina said numbly. "Yeah." Cole's voice was grim. "Which means we're on our own." They spent the rest of the night keeping the fire contained, making sure it didn't spread to the other buildings. By dawn, the barn was nothing but smoking ruins and twisted metal. Raina stood looking at the wreckage, her eyes burning from more than just smoke. "We can rebuild," Cole said quietly. "With what money? We spent everything on the bull and the cows. We can't afford lumber, nails, labor." Her voice cracked. "We can't afford anything." "Then we'll do it ourselves, cut our own timber, mill our own boards. It'll take longer, but—" "Cole." She turned to face him, and he saw the defeat in her eyes. "Maybe Harrow's right. Maybe I should just sell, take his offer and walk away before someone gets killed." "No." The word came out sharp and hard. "You don't mean that. Look around. He burned down my barn. Next time it might be the house or the cattle or—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but they both knew what she meant. "Or us." Cole grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. Men like Harrow win when good people give up. when they let fear make their decisions. Your father didn't give up. He built this place from nothing because he refused to let hard times break him. You've got that same strength, Raina. I've seen it. I'm tired, Cole. I'm so damn tired. I know. His voice softened. But you're not alone. Not anymore. Whatever happens, we face it together. Remember? She looked into his gray eyes, searching for certainty in the midst of chaos, and found it. This man who'd lost everything and kept going. This man who'd promised to keep every promise her brother couldn't. This man who stood with her even when any sane person would have run. Together, she whispered. Together. He pulled her into his arms, and she let herself lean on him, just for a moment. Drew strength from his solid presence, his unshakable resolve. When they finally pulled apart, the sun was rising over the mountains, painting the smoke-stained sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day. A fresh start, whether they wanted one or not. First things first, Cole said. We need shelter for the horses and a place to store what's left of our supplies. Then we figure out how to rebuild. And Harrow? Cole's expression went cold. We deal with him when the time comes. They spent the morning salvaging what they could from the ruins. Most of the tack had burned, but they recovered a few tools, some chain, a box of nails that had somehow survived. It wasn't much, but it was something. Around noon, a wagon appeared on the road. Raina tensed, half expecting more trouble, but relaxed when she recognized the driver. Martha Yates, a widow who ran a small ranch 10 miles east. She'd been friends with Raina's father. Martha pulled up and climbed down, her weathered face creased with concern. Heard about your barn. Came to see if you needed help. Thank you, Martha, but already got 6 men coming tomorrow with lumber and tools. We'll have you a new barn up in a week. She held up a hand when Raina tried to protest. Your father helped my husband build our first barn 30 years ago. Didn't charge us a cent, just said that's what neighbors do. Time I returned the favor. Raina's eyes filled with tears. Martha, I can't afford. Who said anything about money? This is about community, about taking care of our own. She looked at Cole. You must be the drifter everyone's talking about. Cole Maddox, right? Yes, ma'am. Heard you've been doing good work here. Heard other things too, about Flint Harrow and his threats. That true? Yes, ma'am. Martha's expression hardened. Harrow's been a blight on this county for 20 years. Drove 3 families off their land through intimidation and legal tricks. Sheriff won't do anything because Harrow lines his pockets. But there's still good people around who remember what decency looks like. She turned back to Raina. You hold your ground, girl. Don't let that snake take what's yours. I'm trying. I know you are. And you've got help now. She climbed back into her wagon. Men'll be here tomorrow at dawn. Make sure you've got plenty of coffee. She drove off, leaving Raina staring after her in stunned gratitude. Cole put a hand on her shoulder. See? You're not as alone as you think. The next morning, true to Martha's word, 6 men arrived with wagons full of lumber, tools, and supplies. They worked from dawn until dusk, and by the end of the week, a new barn stood where the old one had burned. It wasn't as large or as weathered, but it was solid and sound and built with the kind of care that came from people who understood what it meant to lose everything. Raina tried to pay them, but every man refused. Your father was a good man, they said. This is for him. Cole worked alongside them, his carpentry skills evident in every joint and beam. He didn't talk much, just labored with the same steady competence he brought to everything. And when the last nail was driven and the last board secured, he stood back and surveyed the new barn with quiet satisfaction. It's a good barn, he said. It's a gift, Raina replied. From people I didn't even know cared. They care. They're just afraid to show it because of Harrow. He turned to look at her. But that's changing. You stood up to him. That gives other people courage to do the same. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this wasn't just a temporary reprieve before the next disaster. But Harrow was still out there, still circling, still waiting for his next opportunity. That opportunity came 3 days later. Raina and Cole were checking the fence line on the western boundary when they heard gunshots. Sharp cracks that echoed off the mountains coming from the direction of the south pasture. They spurred their horses into a gallop, racing toward the sound. As they crested the ridge, Raina's blood turned to ice. 4 men on horseback driving her cattle toward the tree line. Rustlers. Son of a... Cole yanked his rifle from its scabbard. Stay here. Like hell I will. Raina pulled her own rifle and kicked her horse forward. They thundered down the slope, closing the distance. The rustlers saw them coming and split up. 2 kept driving the cattle while the other 2 wheeled their horses around to face the threat. One of them raised his rifle and fired. The bullet whined past Raina's ear, so close she felt the air pressure change. She didn't think, just reacted. Raised her rifle, aimed, fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough to make the rustler flinch and duck. Cole was faster. His shot hit the rustler's horse in the rump. Not a killing shot, but enough to make the animal rear and throw its rider. The man hit the ground hard and didn't get up. The second rustler fired again, and this time his aim was better. Cole's horse screamed and stumbled, blood blooming on its shoulder. Cole kicked free of the stirrups and rolled clear as the animal went down. Raina's world narrowed to tunnel vision. Cole on the ground, the rustler taking aim for a second shot. She didn't think about consequences or morality or anything except stopping that man from pulling the trigger. She fired. The rustler jerked backward in his saddle, his rifle falling from his hands. He stared at her for one long moment, then slumped forward over his horse's neck. The animal bolted, carrying its wounded or dead rider into the trees. The remaining 2 rustlers saw what happened and made a choice. They abandoned the cattle and ran, disappearing into the forest like ghosts. Raina dismounted and ran to Cole. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Horse took the bullet. He was already moving toward the downed animal, his face grim. The gelding was thrashing, trying to rise, blood pouring from the shoulder wound. Cole knelt beside it, his hands gentle despite the urgency. Easy, boy. Easy. He examined the wound, his expression darkening. Bullet's still in there. He needs a veterinarian. Closest one is in Leadville. That's 2 hours. Then we'd better hurry. He looked at the rustler still lying motionless on the ground. Check him, see if he's alive. Raina approached cautiously, her rifle ready. The man was breathing but unconscious, a gash on his forehead where he'd hit a rock. She didn't recognize him, just another hired gun doing Harrow's dirty work. He's alive, she called back. Tie him up, we'll bring him to the sheriff. The sheriff won't do anything. Maybe not, but we'll have evidence this time. A witness. They spent the next hour securing the rustler, tending to Cole's injured horse, and rounding up the scattered cattle. By the time they finished, the sun was setting and Raina's whole body ached with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. I shot him, she said suddenly, her voice hollow. That man in the trees? I shot him. Cole looked at her across the rustler's unconscious form. You defended your property, defended me. You did what you had to do. What if I killed him? Then he died committing a crime. That's not on you. He moved closer, his voice gentle. War taught me something, Raina. Sometimes good people have to do hard things to stop bad people from winning. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you strong. I don't feel strong. I feel sick. I know. That means you're still human. He touched her cheek, a fleeting gesture of comfort. But you can fall apart later. Right now we need to get this man to the sheriff and my horse to the vet. They loaded the rustler into the back of the wagon and started the long journey to Leadville. Cole's horse limped alongside. Too injured to carry weight, but able to walk. Every step was agony for the animal, and Raina could see the pain on Cole's face each time the gelding stumbled. That horse has been with you a long time, she said quietly. 5 years. Bought him in Texas after Sarah died. He carried me through a lot of dark places. Cole's jaw tightened. He deserves better than dying because of someone else's greed. They reached Leadville after dark. The veterinarian, a gruff old man named Doc Harrison, examined the horse by lamplight and shook his head. Bullets lodged near the shoulder bone. I can try to remove it, but there's no guarantee he'll survive the surgery. And even if he does, he might never be sound again. Try, Cole said. Please. Doc Harrison nodded and got to work. Cole and Raina waited outside, sitting on a bench in the cold night air. Neither spoke. There was nothing to say. After what felt like hours, the doc emerged. Horse is alive, got the bullet out. Next few days will tell if he makes it. Can I see him? Brief visit. He needs rest. Cole disappeared into the barn. Raina sat alone, staring at the stars and thinking about the man she'd shot. Was he alive? Dead? Would she ever know? Did it matter? Yes, it mattered. Because taking a life, even in defense, changed you, made you see the world differently, made you understand viscerally what you were capable of when pushed far enough. Cole emerged 10 minutes later, his eyes red. He's resting. Doc says we can pick him up in a week if he survives. I'm sorry, Cole. Not your fault. But his voice was thick with grief. Let's get this rustler to the sheriff. Sheriff Brennan was less than pleased to be woken at midnight, and even less pleased when they dumped the rustler, now conscious and sullen, on his office floor. Found him stealing our cattle, Cole said flatly. He and 3 others. They shot my horse and tried to shoot us. Brennan looked at the rustler with barely concealed irritation. You got a name? Jack Keller, the man muttered. Who hired you? Nobody. We were just... Don't lie to me, Keller. Who paid you to rustle cattle from the Mercer Ranch? Keller's jaw worked, but he stayed silent. Brennan sighed and looked at Cole and Raina. I'll hold him overnight, question him proper in the morning. But unless he talks, there's not much I can do. He's working for Harrow, Raina said. Everyone knows it. Knowing and proving are different things. Yeah, I've heard that before. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. How much is Harrow paying you, Sheriff? How much is it worth to you to let him destroy innocent people? Brennan's face flushed. Watch your tone, Miss Mercer. I'm trying to help you. No, you're not. You're protecting a criminal while pretending to do your job. She stood. But here's what you need to know. I'm not giving up. I'm not selling. And if Harrow or his men come after me or my ranch again, I'll defend it, with bullets if necessary. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Same way Cole made me a promise to keep this ranch running. She glanced at Cole, who nodded. We're done playing by rules that only apply to us. From now on, we fight back. She walked out, Cole following. Behind them, Sheriff Brennan called out a warning, but Raina didn't listen. Didn't care. Harrow had drawn blood. Now it was time to return the favor. They rode back to the ranch in silence, arriving just before dawn. The new barn looked ghostly in the pre-dawn light, a reminder of everything they'd already survived, everything they still had to fight for. He'll escalate now, Cole said as they dismounted. We embarrassed him, captured one of his men. He can't let that stand. Let him come, Raina's voice was hard. I'm done being afraid. Being ready isn't the same as not being afraid. Cole checked his rifle, his movements automatic. Fear keeps you sharp, but we need a plan. What kind of plan? We can't just wait for him to attack again. We need to be proactive. Hit him where it hurts. How? Cole was quiet for a long moment, thinking. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful, strategic. Harrow's power comes from fear and money. We can't touch his money, but we can take away his fear. Show other ranchers that he's vulnerable, that he can be stood up to. And how do we do that? We fight him in public, challenge him where everyone can see, force him to show his hand. He looked at her. There's a town meeting next week. All the ranchers will be there, discussing water rights and grazing boundaries. We go. We stand up in front of everyone and accuse him of arson and cattle rustling. You said yourself we can't prove it. We don't need proof. We just need courage. If we stand up, others might follow. Safety in numbers. Raina considered it. The idea terrified her, standing up in front of the whole community, calling out the most powerful man in the county. But Cole was right. Hiding wouldn't save them. Only standing their ground would. All right, she said finally. We do it together. Together, Cole agreed. The week passed in tense preparation. They fortified the ranch, setting up watch rotations, keeping rifles loaded and ready. Harrow didn't attack again, but his presence hung over everything like a storm cloud waiting to break. Cole's horse survived, though Doc Harrison warned he'd always have a limp. Cole paid the vet with the last of his personal money and brought the gelding home, settling him in the new barn with gentle hands and soft words. He's a fighter, Raina said, watching Cole brush the horse's coat. Like you, Cole replied without looking up. The night before the town meeting, neither of them could sleep. They sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching the stars wheel overhead. What if this doesn't work? Raina asked quietly. What if we stand up and nobody backs us? Then we stand alone. But at least we'll have tried. Cole shifted closer, and she felt the warmth of him against her side. I've learned something these past months, Raina. It's not about winning or losing. It's about choosing who you want to be when the pressure comes. And you've chosen to be brave. That matters more than any outcome. When did you get so wise? About the same time I met a woman stubborn enough to fight the whole world for a worn-out ranch and a dream. He smiled slightly. You remind me there's still things worth fighting for. Cole, how? She turned to look at him, and her breath caught. In the starlight, his face was open in a way she'd never seen before. Vulnerable. Hopeful. What happens after all this? After we stand up to Harrow? What happens to us? I don't know, he admitted, but I'd like to find out. If you'll have me. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Have you how? However you want. As a ranch hand, as a partner, as... He stopped, swallowed hard. As more, if you'd want that. I know I'm just a drifter with nothing to offer but hard work and broken promises from other people. But what I can promise is this. I'll never leave you. Not unless you tell me to go. Raina couldn't breathe. This man, this incredible, impossible man, was offering her everything, his loyalty, his protection, his heart. I want more, she whispered. God help me, Cole. I want everything. He reached up and cupped her face in his scarred, work-roughened hands. Then you've got it, all of it, for as long as you'll have me. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like every broken promise her brother had made was being rebuilt, brick by brick, by this man who understood what it meant to keep your word, who'd proven again and again that love wasn't just words, it was action, sacrifice, standing beside someone even when the world burned down around you. When they finally pulled apart, Raina was crying, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. Tomorrow, we fight, she said. Tomorrow, we fight, Cole agreed. Together. Always together. They sat on that porch until dawn, wrapped in each other's arms, stealing a moment of peace before the storm. And when the sun finally rose, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, they stood up as one. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to reclaim their future from the man who'd tried to steal it. Ready to prove that some promises were worth dying for, and some loves were worth fighting for until the very end. The town hall in Leadville was packed by the time Raina and Cole arrived. Every rancher within 50 miles had come for the quarterly meeting, their faces weathered and skeptical, their bodies taking up space with the confidence of men who'd carved their lives from unforgiving land. A few women sat scattered among them, widows mostly, or wives whose husbands trusted their judgment enough to let them speak. Raina felt every eye turned toward her as she walked down the center aisle. She kept her chin up, her spine straight, refusing to show the fear churning in her gut. Cole walked beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, his presence a steady anchor in turbulent waters. Flint Harrow sat in the front row, surrounded by his men like a king holding court. When he saw Raina, his lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd known she would come, had probably been counting on it. Miss Mercer, he said loud enough for half the room to hear. Glad you could join us. Though I'm surprised you had time, what with rebuilding your barn and all. Terrible accident, that fire. Wasn't an accident, Raina said clearly, and you know it. The room went silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the men standing by the door turned to stare. Harrow's smile widened. That's a serious accusation. You have proof? I have your threats, I have your motive, and I have a pattern of harassment that's been going on for 2 years. She turned to address the room. How many of you have had trouble with rustlers lately? Fences cut? Water sources mysteriously poisoned? A few men shifted uncomfortably. One rancher near the back, a weathered Mexican man named Carlos Mendoza, raised his hand slowly. I lost 15 head last month, he said. Tracks led toward Harrow's land, but the sheriff said there wasn't enough evidence. Same here, another voice called out. 20 head gone in September. My water was poisoned, a woman said from the left side of the room. Killed 3 cows and made the rest sick for weeks. Harrow stood, his face flushed with anger. You people are listening to the paranoid ravings of a desperate woman. I've never stolen from any of you. These are hard times. Rustlers are everywhere. Water gets contaminated naturally. Nothing natural about arsenic, the woman interrupted. Had the water tested. Someone dumped poison in my creek. And let me guess. You think I did it? Harrow's voice dripped with contempt. Why would I waste time poisoning water or stealing a few head of cattle when I own the biggest spread in 3 counties? Because you want more, Cole said quietly. Every head turned toward him. He'd been so still, so silent, that people had almost forgotten he was there. Now he stepped forward, his gray eyes locked on Harrow. You've spent 20 years consolidating land, crushing anyone who wouldn't sell. Small ranchers, mostly. People without the resources to fight back legally. You use intimidation, sabotage, and when that doesn't work, you get the sheriff to foreclose on trumped-up charges. You don't know what you're talking about, Drifter. Don't I? I've seen men like you before. Carpetbaggers during Reconstruction who bought up southern farms for pennies on the dollar. Land speculators who burned out homesteaders in Kansas. You're not unique, Harrow. You're just another bully with enough money to make other people look the other way. Harrow's hand moved toward his gun belt, then stopped. Too many witnesses. Too public. He forced his hand to relax. Big words from a man with no stake in this community. You're what? Miss Mercer's hired hand, her kept man? You don't even own land here. No, Cole agreed, but I know right from wrong, and burning someone's barn, rustling their cattle, and terrorizing them into selling, that's wrong, no matter how much money you have. Prove it. Harrow stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. Go ahead, Maddox, prove I did any of those things. Because unless you can, you're just another nobody making noise. Cole smiled, and there was something cold in it. Jack Keller. Harrow went very still. What? Jack Keller, one of your hired guns. He's currently sitting in Sheriff Brennan's jail, caught red-handed rustling cattle from the Mercer Ranch. Shot my horse. Would have shot us too if we hadn't fought back. Cole's voice carried to every corner of the room. Now Keller's not talking yet, but men in jail get lonely, get scared. And when the federal marshals get involved, and they will, because cattle rustling is a federal crime, he's going to start talking to save his own neck. Question is, what's he going to say about you? The color drained from Harrow's face. For just a moment, his mask slipped, and everyone in that room saw the truth, saw the calculation, the fear, the guilt. Then the mask was back, but it was too late. The damage was done. Federal marshals, someone muttered. Jesus. That's why he's been using hired guns, another rancher said. Keeps his own hands clean. But if Keller talks, we could all get our land back, get justice. The murmur grew louder, dozens of conversations breaking out at once. Harrow looked around, seeing his power base crumbling, and his expression turned vicious. You'll regret this, he said softly, his eyes fixed on Raina. Both of you. I don't care what it takes. I don't care who gets hurt. That ranch will be mine, and you'll have nothing. No, Raina said, her voice clear and strong. That ranch is mine. My father built it. I've bled for it, and I'll be damned if I let you take it from me. She looked around the room. Any of you who want to stand together against this man, come to my ranch tomorrow. We'll organize. Pool our resources. Go to the federal authorities together. There's power in numbers, but only if we have the courage to use it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Carlos Mendoza stood. I'll be there, he said. Me too, the woman with the poisoned water added. One by one, 10 ranchers stood. Then 15. Then 20. Not everyone. Some were still too afraid, too cowed by years of Harrow's intimidation. But enough. More than enough. Harrow looked at the faces turned against him and knew he'd lost. Not everything. Not yet. But the foundation of fear he'd built his empire on was cracking. And once it started, it would be impossible to stop. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Cole replied. It is. You just don't know it yet. Harrow stormed out, his men following like a pack of wolves. The door slammed behind them with a finality that echoed through the hall. Raina let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. Her legs were shaking, her hands trembling with adrenaline, but she'd done it. They'd done it. Stood up in front of everyone and called Harrow out for what he was. And people had listened. Cole's hand found hers, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, grateful beyond words for his presence, his strength, his unwavering support. "You were incredible," he murmured. "We were incredible," she corrected. The ranchers who'd stood with them crowded around, shaking hands, making plans. They'd meet tomorrow at Mercer Ridge. They'd write everything down, every incident, every suspicious death or disappearance, every piece of evidence, no matter how small. Then they'd send someone to Denver to contact the federal marshals. Together, they'd build a case that even the corrupt local sheriff couldn't ignore. It was happening. After years of fear and isolation, the community was finally fighting back. By the time they left the town hall, the sun was setting. Raina and Cole rode home through the twilight, neither speaking, both processing what had just happened. The world felt different somehow, lighter. Like a weight she'd been carrying for so long had finally been lifted. "Do you think he'll really come after us?" she asked finally. "Yes. Men like Harrow don't surrender gracefully." Cole's jaw tightened. "We need to be ready, tonight especially. He'll want to strike while his pride is wounded." "Let him come. I'm not afraid anymore." "Maybe you should be, just a little." He looked at her, his eyes serious. "Being brave doesn't mean being reckless, Raina. We've made an enemy, a powerful, dangerous enemy. And until the marshals arrive, we're vulnerable. Then we'll be careful, but I won't hide. Not anymore." They rode the rest of the way in silence, hyper alert to every shadow, every sound. But the night remained quiet, peaceful even. By the time they reached the ranch, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Cole tended to the horses while Raina made supper. They ate together at the kitchen table, the conversation sparse but comfortable. When the dishes were washed and put away, Cole stood to go. "I'll keep watch tonight," he said. From the barn. "If Harrow tries anything, stay." The word came out before Raina could stop it. "Please, I don't want to be alone tonight." Cole looked at her, understanding in his eyes. This wasn't about romance or impropriety. This was about two people who'd faced down their worst fear together and needed the comfort of not being alone. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll stay." He took the spare room, her father's old room, untouched since his death. Raina lay in her own bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling, of Cole moving around in the next room. It should have felt strange having him there. Instead, it felt right, natural, safe. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, something woke her. A sound. Not loud, but wrong. The creak of a floorboard, the scrape of a window. Someone was in the house. Raina sat up slowly, reaching for the pistol she kept under her pillow. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady. She'd faced down Harrow in public today. She could face whatever came in the dark. A shadow moved in her doorway, man-shaped, too large to be Cole. She raised the pistol. "Don't move!" The figure lunged. Raina pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the small room, the muzzle flash blinding. The figure stumbled but kept coming, crashing into her, knocking the gun from her hand. They hit the floor together, the intruder's weight crushing the air from her lungs. "Cole!" she screamed. A fist connected with her jaw, snapping her head back. Stars exploded across her vision. She bucked and twisted, fighting with everything she had, but he was so much stronger. His hands found her throat, squeezing. Then the weight was gone. Lifted bodily away. Raina gasped for air, her vision clearing just in time to see Cole slam the intruder against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. The man tried to fight back, but Cole was faster, harder. He drove his fist into the intruder's stomach, then his face, then his stomach again. The man crumpled. "Light!" Cole barked. "I need light!" Raina scrambled up, her hands shaking, and lit the lamp. In its glow, she saw the intruder clearly for the first time. One of Harrow's men. She'd seen him at the town hall. His face was bloody, his nose clearly broken, and he wasn't getting up anytime soon. "Are there others?" Cole demanded, grabbing the man by his shirt. "Go to hell," the man gasped. Cole hit him again. "How many?" "Two. Two more. Outside." Cole released him and turned to Raina. Blood was streaming from a cut above her eye, and bruises were already forming on her throat. Fury blazed in his gray eyes, cold and deadly. Stay here, he said. No, we stay together. She picked up her pistol with shaking hands. Together, remember? He looked like he wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. He nodded once, checking his own gun. Stay behind me. They moved through the house like ghosts, checking every room, every corner, empty. When they reached the back door, Cole eased it open. Two men stood by the corral, torches in hand. They were dousing the new barn with kerosene. No, Raina breathed. Not again. Cole didn't hesitate. He stepped out onto the porch and fired a shot into the air. The two men spun around, dropping their torches. One drew his gun. Don't, Cole warned. You're already looking at arson and attempted murder. You really want to add another charge? The men looked at each other, calculating their odds. Two of them. Two of their targets. Even fight. Maybe they could win. Maybe... Sheriff Brennan's voice cut through the night. Put your hands up, all of you. He emerged from the shadows, gun drawn, two deputies flanking him. Behind them, at least a dozen other men, ranchers from the town meeting, drawn by the gunshot. Carlos Mendoza. Martha Yates's son. Others Raina recognized but couldn't name. They'd come. When they heard trouble, they'd come to help. The two arsonists raised their hands. One of the deputies moved forward to restrain them while Brennan surveyed the scene. The kerosene-soaked barn, the discarded torches, Raina's battered face. Caught them red-handed, he said, almost to himself. Can't ignore this. You've been ignoring it for 2 years, Raina snapped. I know. Brennan wouldn't meet her eyes. I was wrong. Harrow paid me to look the other way, and I did, because I told myself it was just business, just money. But this... He gestured at the barn, at Raina's bruises. This is too far. So what now? Cole asked. Now I arrest these men, and I send a wire to Denver first thing in the morning, asking for federal marshals. Brennan finally looked at Raina. I can't undo what I've done, Miss Mercer, but I can try to make it right going forward. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was something. The third man's inside, Cole said. Unconscious in Raina's bedroom. Brennan's eyes widened. He broke into the house? Tried to kill her. I stopped him. One of the deputies went inside, returning a few minutes later, half carrying, half dragging the third attacker. All three were loaded into a wagon and taken away, Brennan promising to guard them personally until the marshals arrived. When they were gone, the other ranchers helped Cole wash down the barn, removing the kerosene before it could ignite. They worked through the night, refusing to leave until the job was done, until they were certain Raina was safe. As dawn broke, Carlos approached Raina with a steaming cup of coffee. You started something today, señorita. Something good. For the first time in years, people aren't afraid to stand together. I couldn't have done it without Cole, she said. Maybe, but he couldn't have done it without you either. That's how it works. We're stronger together. He smiled. Your father would be proud. After everyone left, Raina and Cole stood in the barn, surveying the damage that wasn't. The kerosene had been washed away, the barn was safe, the ranch was safe. We need to talk about last night, Cole said quietly. About which part? The public confrontation? The home invasion? The attempted arson? About you asking me to stay. He turned to face her. About what that meant. What this means. Raina's throat tightened. Her face hurt. Her body ached, and exhaustion pulled at every cell. But this conversation couldn't wait. Not anymore. It means I don't want you in the barn anymore, she said. It means I don't want you at arm's length, keeping everything proper and distant. It means... Her voice cracked. It means I'm falling in love with you, Cole Maddox. And I don't care if that's too fast or too desperate or too anything. After last night, after everything, I'm done pretending I don't feel what I feel. Cole closed the distance between them in 3 strides and cupped her face in his hands, careful of her bruises. I fell in love with you weeks ago, he said roughly. The day you rode through that blizzard to check on a single lost calf. The way you fixed fence without complaining. The way you stood up to Harrow even when you were terrified. You're the bravest, strongest, most incredible woman I've ever met, Raina. And if you'll have me, truly have me, Not just as a ranch hand, but as a partner, as a husband. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice. Husband, she repeated, the word sweet on her tongue. If you want. When you're ready. No rush, no pressure. But that's where my heart is. He pressed his forehead to hers. I want to build a life with you. Here, on this land your father loved. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to face whatever comes, good or bad, together. Always together. Yes. The word came out as a sob. Yes, yes, yes. He kissed her then, gentle despite the passion, mindful of her injuries. And Raina kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, love and gratitude and hope and fierce, unbreakable joy. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying, but they were tears of happiness, of relief, of two broken people finding wholeness in each other. How long? She asked. How long until we can make it official? However long you want. A month? A year? Tomorrow? Not tomorrow. I look terrible. She touched her swollen eye, wincing. But soon. As soon as this is over. As soon as Harrow's dealt with and the ranch is secure. Deal. He kissed her forehead, her uninjured cheek, the tip of her nose. But I'm moving into the house. No arguments. We'll keep separate rooms until we're married, stay proper, but I'm not spending another night away from you when danger's still out there. No arguments, she agreed. The federal marshals arrived 4 days later, two hard-eyed men with federal badges and the authority to arrest anyone, sheriff included. They interviewed everyone, collected evidence, and within a week, they had enough to arrest Flint Harrow on charges of conspiracy to commit arson, cattle rustling, bribery, and attempted murder. The whole town turned out to watch him be loaded into the prison wagon. He didn't go quietly, screaming threats and promises of revenge. But the marshals had dealt with men like him before. They simply gagged him and drove away, taking his hired guns with them. Sheriff Brennan resigned the next day, unable to face the community after his corruption was exposed. A new sheriff was elected. Carlos Mendoza's brother, a former Texas Ranger with a reputation for honesty. And slowly, painfully, the county began to heal. Ranchers reclaimed land that had been stolen. Water sources were cleaned, fences were repaired. The community that Harrow had fractured began to knit itself back together, stronger for having survived. Through it all, Raina and Cole worked side by side, rebuilding not just the ranch but their future. The cattle herd grew. The 3 pregnant cows delivered healthy calves. Duke the Bull proved his worth, covering half the herd by spring. Winter gave way to snowmelt, then to wildflowers carpeting the meadows. And one morning in late April, Raina woke to find Cole already dressed, nervously fidgeting with his hat. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing's wrong, just—" He took a breath. "I know we said soon, and I know there's still work to do, but I can't wait anymore, Raina. I don't want to wait, so I'm asking, officially, properly, will you marry me?" She launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I thought you'd never ask." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes, 1,000 times yes." He spun her around, laughing with pure joy, and she laughed too, giddy and weightless and happier than she'd ever thought possible. They were married 3 weeks later under a canopy of mountain bluebells, with half the county in attendance. Martha Yates cried through the whole ceremony. Carlos gave Raina away, standing in for the father she'd lost. And when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, because she was. The ranch prospered through the summer. Raina and Cole worked from dawn to dusk, building something lasting, something real. The house got new shutters, fresh paint, a garden that burst with vegetables. The barn got a weather vane shaped like a running horse, a gift from Cole to commemorate the gelding that had survived the shooting. And on warm evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching the sun set behind the mountains, marveling at how far they'd come. From strangers to partners to lovers to spouses, from desperation to hope to joy. "Do you ever regret it?" Raina asked one evening, her head resting on Cole's shoulder. "Staying here? Giving up your freedom?" "Every day," he said, and she pulled back, hurt, until she saw the teasing glint in his eye. "I regret that I didn't find you sooner, that we lost even one day we could have spent together." Smooth talker. "I mean it." He turned serious, taking her hand. Sarah was my first love, and I'll always carry her with me. But you're my future, Raina. You're the reason I stopped drifting, the reason I learned to hope again, and I don't regret a single moment since the day I heard you arguing in that Wells Fargo office. Best argument I ever had, she agreed. Best promise I ever made, he countered. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, and Raina thought about promises, the ones that had been broken and the ones that had been kept. Her brother's empty words and Cole's unshakable vows, the way trust could be shattered in an instant but rebuilt over time with consistent action. I got a letter today, she said quietly. From Daniel. Cole stiffened slightly. What did it say? That he's sorry, that he got caught up in a bad investment and lost everything, that he never meant to hurt me. She paused. He asked if he could come visit, try to make amends. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell, but another part, she sighed, he's still my brother. And you taught me something about forgiveness, about how carrying anger just weighs you down. I didn't forgive easily, Cole reminded her. Took me 3 years to stop being angry at myself. But you did it, eventually. She looked at him. Do you think I should give him another chance? I think that's your decision. But if you do, know that I'll be right beside you, supporting whatever choice you make. She squeezed his hand. What did I do to deserve you? You gave a drifter a chance when you had every reason not to. You trusted me when trust was the hardest thing in the world. He kissed her temple. You saved me just as much as I saved you, Raina. Never forget that. They stayed on the porch until the moon rose, bright and full, casting silver light across the ranch. Their ranch, their home, their future. And Raina knew, with absolute certainty, that every broken promise she'd endured had led her here, to this man, to this life, to this moment of perfect peace. Cole had promised to keep every promise her brother couldn't, and he had. Not just once, but every single day since. In big ways and small ways, in words and actions. In loyalty and love and the simple act of showing up, again and again, when it would have been easier to walk away. He'd kept every promise. And in doing so, he'd given her the greatest gift of all, a future worth believing in. 3 months after the wedding, Daniel Mercer arrived on a Tuesday afternoon when the September sun hung low and golden over the mountains. Raina was in the garden, pulling the last of the summer squash, when she heard the horse approaching. She straightened, wiping dirt from her hands, and watched her brother ride up the path she'd traveled 1,000 times. He looked different, thinner, his face lined with hardship in a way it hadn't been before. His clothes were clean but worn, his horse tired. When he dismounted and removed his hat, she saw genuine shame in his eyes. Raina, he said, his voice rough. Thank you for letting me come. She didn't move toward him, didn't offer the embrace he clearly hoped for. Instead, she studied him the way she'd learned to study horses at auction, looking for soundness beneath the surface, for truth beneath the performance. You broke every promise you made me, she said quietly, left me with nothing but debt and false hope. I almost lost everything because of you. I know. He twisted his hat in his hands. I know. And I'm sorry. I thought I could make it big in the silver mine, send you money, come home a hero. But I was a fool. Lost everything on bad investments and worse decisions. By the time I realized how bad it was, I was too ashamed to write, too ashamed to face you. So you just stayed away. Let me think you'd abandoned me completely. Yes. The word came out like a confession. And that makes it worse. I'm not here to make excuses, Raina. I'm here to tell you the truth and ask for your forgiveness, even though I don't deserve it. Cole emerged from the barn, his approach silent, but his presence commanding. He positioned himself slightly behind Raina, not threatening but unmistakably protective. Daniel's eyes flicked to him and then back to Raina. Is this him? The man you wrote about? Cole Maddox, Raina said. My husband. The drifter who kept my promises. Daniel's voice was soft, full of something that might have been gratitude or might have been regret. Thank you. For being there when I wasn't. For doing what I should have done. Cole nodded once but didn't speak. This was Raina's conversation, her decision. He was just there to support whatever choice she made. Why now? Raina asked. Why come back after all this time? Because I'm done running, done lying to myself about who I am and what I've done. Daniel took a step closer, then stopped when Raina tensed. I hit bottom in Denver 3 months ago. Lost my last dollar, slept in alleys, begged for food. And one night, drunk and desperate, I looked up at the stars and thought about Dad, about what he'd say if he could see me. His voice cracked. He'd be ashamed of the man I became, the promises I broke, the sister I abandoned. And I realized I had 2 choices. I could die in that alley, or I could try to become someone worth saving. So I got work, hard work, mucking stables, hauling freight, anything that paid, saved every penny. And when I had enough for a horse and supplies, I came here. Because I owe you an apology, and because I want to try to be the brother you deserved in the first place. Raina felt tears burning behind her eyes. Part of her wanted to stay angry, to make him suffer the way she'd suffered. But another part, the part that had learned about grace and second chances from a man who'd lost everything and found redemption, understood that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing not to let the past poison the future. I can't just forgive you, she said finally. Not yet. You hurt me too deeply. I understand, but I'm willing to let you try, to earn back my trust. She gestured toward the barn. We need help with the fall harvest, and there's 100 other jobs that need doing before winter. You can stay in the barn, work for your keep, and we'll see where it goes from there. No promises. No guarantees. Just honest work and time. Daniel's eyes brightened with hope. That's more than I deserve. Yes, Cole said quietly, speaking for the first time. It is. So don't waste it. I won't. I swear Daniel stopped himself. No. No more swearing. No more promises until I've proven I can keep them. Just thank you. Over the following weeks, Daniel threw himself into the work with a fervor that surprised even Raina. He was up before dawn, working until his hands bled, never complaining even when Cole assigned him the worst tasks. He mucked stalls, hauled water, repaired fence in the freezing morning cold. And slowly, grudgingly, Raina began to see glimpses of the brother she remembered from childhood. The one who'd carried her on his shoulders through fields of wildflowers. The one who'd taught her to ride and rope and read the weather. That brother had gotten lost somewhere along the way. But maybe, just maybe, he was finding his way back. One evening, after a particularly long day of harvesting hay, the 3 of them sat on the porch, sharing a bottle of whiskey. Daniel had stayed mostly silent throughout dinner, but now, with the alcohol loosening his tongue, he spoke. I met a man in Denver, he said, former prospector who'd lost everything in the silver crash. He told me something I didn't understand at the time. He said, the real treasure isn't what you find in the ground. It's what you build with your hands and who you build it with. Daniel looked at the ranch spread out before them. I get it now. I spent years chasing gold and silver, thinking money would make me somebody. But you 2, you built something real here, something that matters. Wasn't easy, Raina said. Nothing worth having ever is. He turned to Cole. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. How'd you do it? How'd you go from drifting to this, to having a home, a wife, a purpose? Cole was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. I stopped running, stopped trying to escape my past, and started building a future instead. And I found someone worth building it with. He reached over and took Raina's hand. The key isn't the place, it's the people. Find the right people, and anywhere can be home. I hope I can find that someday, Daniel said softly. Maybe you already have, Raina said. If you're willing to stay, to put down roots instead of chasing the next big thing. You'd let me stay? Permanently? This is your home too, Daniel. It always was. Dad built this ranch for both of us. She squeezed Cole's hand. There's enough room for 3, if you're willing to work for it. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I won't let you down. Not again. Then prove it, Cole said, not unkindly. Not with words, with action, every single day. I will. Daniel wiped his eyes roughly. I promise. He stopped. No. I'll show you. That's better than promising. As winter approached, the ranch settled into a new rhythm. 3 people working in concert, each contributing their strengths. Cole's carpentry skills, Raina's management expertise, Daniel's growing competence with the cattle. They reinforced buildings against the coming snow, stocked firewood, salted meat, prepared for the long, cold months ahead. And one evening in late November, as the first serious snow began to fall, Raina realized she was late. Her monthly bleeding, normally regular as clockwork, hadn't come. She sat in the kitchen, counting days on her fingers, her heart beginning to race. She was pregnant. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt, equal parts terror and joy. A baby. She and Cole were going to have a baby. She pressed her hands to her stomach, feeling nothing yet but knowing something miraculous was beginning. When Cole came in from checking the livestock, she was crying. He was beside her in an instant, his face creased with concern. What's wrong? Are you hurt? No, I'm... She laughed through her tears. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. Cole went very still. A baby? He repeated, as if testing the word. You're sure? Pretty sure. I'm 6 weeks late, and I've been sick in the mornings, though I thought it was just something I ate. She searched his face anxiously. Are you happy? I know we didn't plan... He kissed her, cutting off her worry. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Happy. Raina, I don't even have words. After Sarah died, I thought I'd never have this, never have a family, a child, a future, and now you're giving me all of it. His voice broke. I'm the luckiest man alive. So you're ready to be a father? Absolutely terrified and completely ready. He placed his hand gently on her stomach. We're going to do this together. Raise this child on this land, teach them everything your father taught you, give them the life we both wanted. Daniel appeared in the doorway, took one look at their faces, and grinned. I'm going to be an uncle? Seems like it, Raina said. Hot damn! He whooped and grabbed them both in a hug. This is the best news. This ranch needs kids, needs life. That winter was the longest and coldest in recent memory, but inside the house at Mercer Ridge, warmth abounded. They spent evenings by the fire, Cole reading aloud from books while Raina knitted tiny garments and Daniel whittled wooden toys. They told stories, made plans, dreamed about the future. And when spring finally arrived with its promise of rebirth and renewal, Raina's belly was round and full. She moved more slowly now, but she still insisted on doing her share of the work. Cole and Daniel watched her like hawks, ready to jump in if she so much as looked tired. I'm pregnant, not fragile, she protested, after Daniel literally carried her back to the house because she'd been standing too long. Humor us, Cole said. We're first-time father and uncle. We're allowed to be overprotective. The baby came on a warm May morning when the mountain bluebells were in full bloom. Doc Harrison had agreed to come out from Leadville, but he arrived 2 hours too late. By then, Martha Yates had already helped deliver a healthy baby boy with strong lungs and his father's gray eyes. Cole held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. He's perfect, he whispered. He's absolutely perfect. He looks like you, Raina said, exhausted but radiant. He's got your nose. And your determination. Listen to him yell. Cole looked up, meeting her eyes. Thank you, for him, for all of this, for giving me a reason to stop drifting. You gave me a reason to keep fighting, she replied. I think we're even. They named him Thomas, after Raina's father. Thomas Cole Maddox, born into a legacy of broken promises remade and dreams salvaged from the ashes. He was baptized under the same bluebells where his parents had married, with half the county in attendance. And as Raina stood with her husband and son and brother, looking out at the community that had rallied around them, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the struggles that had made her strong, for the stranger who'd become her salvation, for the second chances that had rebuilt her family. The first year of Thomas's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and infinite joy. He grew quickly, strong and healthy, already showing signs of his father's quiet determination and his mother's fierce spirit. Daniel proved to be a devoted uncle, spending hours entertaining the baby with songs and stories and carved animals. And the ranch thrived. The cattle herd reached 70 head, then 80. They hired 2 seasonal workers to help with the summer work. The house got an addition, a nursery for Thomas and a larger bedroom for Raina and Cole. The barn got new stalls and a proper tack room. Bit by bit, board by board, they built something lasting. One afternoon in late summer, Raina found Cole in the pasture, teaching Thomas, now a sturdy 1-year-old, how to pat a horse's nose. The baby giggled with delight, his chubby hands gentle despite his excitement. "You're a natural," she said, coming up beside them. "Had a good teacher," Cole replied, nodding toward the mountains. "Your father's legacy lives on in this place, in this boy, in everything we've built." "Our legacy now," Raina corrected. "Yours and mine and Thomas's." "And one more," Cole said carefully. She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "Daniel told me this morning. He's been courting Martha Yates's daughter, Emily. Asked my permission to propose to her." Raina's eyes widened. "Emily? That shy little thing who brought us bread after the fire?" "Not so shy anymore, apparently. Daniel's been teaching her to ride, and she's been teaching him to read better. They're good for each other." He paused. "I told him yes, but it's your ranch, too. Your decision." "Of course it's yes. Emily's wonderful, and Daniel's become the man I always knew he could be." She felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears this time. "He kept his word, proved himself through action, not promises." "Just like someone else I know," Cole said, pulling her close. Daniel and Emily were married in October, a simple ceremony followed by a barn dance that lasted until dawn. They moved into a small cabin Daniel built on the eastern edge of the property, close enough to help with the ranch, but far enough to have their own space. And the following spring, Emily announced she was expecting. The Mercer Maddox legacy would continue into another generation. Years passed, marked by the rhythm of seasons and the milestones of growing children. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the land as much as his mother and grandfather before him. A daughter came next. Sarah Grace, named for the wife Cole had lost and the grace that had saved him. Then another son, Daniel William, who had his uncle's quick laugh and gentle heart. The ranch expanded. They bought adjoining property when Old Man Henderson died without heirs. Added sheep to their cattle operation. Planted an orchard that would take years to mature but would feed generations to come. Daniel proved himself invaluable, managing the day-to-day operations while Cole focused on long-term planning and Raina handled the books. Emily became Raina's closest friend, the sister she'd never had. Their children grew up together, cousins who were more like siblings. And through it all, Cole kept his promises. Every single one. He woke before dawn to feed the livestock, no matter how tired. He repaired what broke, built what was needed, protected what mattered. He was patient with the children, kind to the workers, respectful to the neighbors. He loved Raina with a steadiness that never wavered, not through hard times or good, not through sickness or health. He was the rock on which their entire world was built. One evening, 10 years after that fateful day in the Wells Fargo office, Raina found Cole on the porch where they'd shared so many conversations. Their children were asleep, the house quiet, the world peaceful. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. "The day we met?" "Every day," he admitted. "I think about how close I came to just walking past, minding my own business, staying a drifter." "What made you stop?" "Honestly, I heard the defeat in your voice. The way you said he broke every promise, like promises were supposed to mean something. And I thought about Sarah, about all the promises I'd made and broken by not being there. And I just knew, that if I walked away, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." "Best decision you ever made?" "Second best," he corrected. "Best decision was asking you to marry me." She laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm pregnant again." Cole straightened, turning to look at her with joy and concern. "Again? Are you sure?" "Very sure, due in the spring. 4th child." He shook his head in wonder. 4 children on a ranch that almost died. A family built from broken promises and second chances. "A legacy," Raina said softly. "For our children and their children. Everything we've built, the ranch, the reputation, the community. They'll inherit all of it." What do you think your father would say? If he could see all this? Raina closed her eyes, imagining her father's weathered face, his proud smile. I think he'd say we did right by his dream, that we honored his sacrifice, and I think he'd be proud that his grandson carries his name. I wish I'd met him. He would have loved you, would have recognized you as a kindred spirit, a man who understands that promises matter, that land matters, that family matters more than anything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. From inside the house came the sound of Thomas crying out from a nightmare. Before Raina could move, Cole was up. I'll get him, he said. You rest. She watched him disappear into the house and felt overwhelming gratitude for this man who'd wandered into her life at its darkest moment, who'd offered everything when he had nothing, who'd kept every promise when the world had taught her that promises were just pretty lies. Cole returned a few minutes later, Thomas sleepy and content in his arms. He had a bad dream. Wanted his mama, but I convinced him Papa's lap would do. Raina smiled at the sight of them, her strong, steady husband holding their son with such tenderness. You're a good father, Cole Maddox. I'm trying to be. Trying to be the man Thomas will remember when he's grown, the kind of man who keeps his word. He looked down at his son. I want him to know that promises matter, that when you give your word, you move heaven and earth to keep it. You've already taught him that. You teach him every single day just by being who you are. Thomas stirred, mumbling something unintelligible, then settled back into sleep. Cole carried him inside and tucked him into bed, then returned to Raina. I got a letter today, he said quietly. From the Army. They're looking for men with frontier experience to serve as scouts out west. Paying well. Very well. Raina's stomach dropped. Are you thinking about it? No. The word was immediate and emphatic. Not for a second. I just thought you should know about it, in case you heard rumors. He took her hand. I made you a promise, Raina. I said I'd never leave unless you told me to go. And I meant it. This is my home. You're my home. Or nothing could make me leave. Not even good money? Not even that. He pulled her close. I chased enough things in my life. War, redemption, forgiveness. I'm done chasing. I've got everything I need right here. The fourth baby, another girl, arrived in April on a day when the wildflowers covered the meadows like a blessing. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope for the future. Hope that broken things could be mended. Hope that promises kept could outweigh promises broken. Daniel and Emily's family grew too, 3 children in quick succession, filling their cabin with noise and laughter. The cousins ran wild through the ranch, learning to ride and rope and respect the land that sustained them. And on Thomas's 12th birthday, Cole took him aside for a man-to-man conversation. Your mother and I have been talking, he said. This ranch will be yours someday, yours and your siblings. It's your inheritance, your legacy. But with that comes responsibility. I understand, Papa. Do you? Because it's not just about owning land, it's about stewarding it, protecting it, passing it on better than you received it. Cole placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Your grandfather built this place from nothing. Your mother kept it alive when everyone said she should give up, and I've tried to honor their work by making it stronger. Now it's your turn to learn what that means. How do I do that? By keeping your promises, by working hard even when it's difficult, by treating people fairly and standing up for what's right, even when it costs you. Cole's voice was steady, certain, and by understanding that this ranch isn't just dirt and cattle. It's family. It's community. It's a promise we make to the future. Like the promise you made Mama, the one about keeping all the promises Uncle Daniel broke? Exactly like that. I made a vow and I've spent every day since keeping it. That's what men do, son. We make promises and we keep them, no matter what. Thomas nodded solemnly, absorbing the lesson. I'll remember, Papa, I promise. Good. Now go help your uncle with the horses. He's been waiting for you. As Thomas ran off, Raina appeared at Cole's side. She'd been listening from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. That was beautiful, she said. It's the truth. Everything I learned from watching you fight for this place. He wiped her tears gently. You taught me what it means to keep a promise, Raina. to honor your commitments even when it's hard. I'm just passing that lesson on. He'll be a good man, like his father. Like his mother, Cole corrected, strong and stubborn and unwilling to quit when things get hard. The years continued to unfold, each one adding another layer to the legacy they were building. The orchard Cole had planted finally bore fruit, sweet apples that they sold in Leadville and preserved for winter. The ranch became known throughout the county for quality cattle and honest dealing. Young men came seeking work, knowing that Cole Maddox paid fairly and treated his hands with respect. And every evening, without fail, Cole and Raina sat on that porch and watched the sunset, counted their blessings, planned for tomorrow. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised her with a gift, a new sign for the ranch entrance, hand-carved from oak with letters painted gold. Mercer Ridge Ranch, it read. Est 1843. Rebuilt 1883. Legacy eternal. Rebuilt? Raina said softly, running her fingers over the letters. That's perfect. It's the truth. Your father built it the first time. We rebuilt it together. And our children will keep rebuilding it generation after generation, because that's what legacies are. Not something static, but something living, growing, changing while staying true to its foundation. When did you become such a philosopher? About the time I stopped being a drifter and became a husband. He pulled her close. Thank you for 20 years of adventure, partnership, and love. For 4 children who amaze me every day. For a home I never thought I'd have and a future I never dreamed possible. Thank you for keeping your promise, she replied. Every single day, without fail. You did what you said you'd do. You kept every promise my brother broke and then some. It was easy, Cole said simply, because keeping promises to you never felt like work. It felt like love. The children grew and married and had children of their own. Thomas took over primary management of the ranch, proving himself as capable as his parents had been. Sarah Grace married a teacher and started a school in Leadville, bringing education to children who'd never had it before. Daniel William became a veterinarian, serving ranchers throughout the county. And Hope, sweet, fierce Hope, became a lawyer, fighting for property rights and fair dealing in the courts. All of them carried forward the lessons they'd learned. Keep your promises. Work hard. Treat people fairly. Protect what matters. And when Cole was 73 years old, his hair silver and his hands gnarled with arthritis, he still rose before dawn to check on the livestock, still repaired what broke, still sat with Raina on the porch every evening, holding her hand and counting stars. You don't have to work so hard anymore, Raina said one evening. The kids can handle it. I know, but I want to. As long as my body lets me, I'll work this ranch. It's who I am. You've more than earned your rest, Cole. I'll rest when I'm dead, he said, then softened. But maybe I could slow down a bit. Let Thomas carry more weight. Enjoy my grandchildren while I still can. 14 grandchildren and counting, Raina marveled. Can you believe it? From a dying ranch to this? A legacy that spans generations. All because a woman refused to give up, and a drifter decided to stay. Best decision we ever made. Second best, Cole corrected, just as he always did. Best decision was choosing each other. On a cool September morning, 52 years after that fateful meeting in the Wells Fargo office, Cole Maddox died peacefully in his sleep. He was 77 years old, surrounded by family, loved beyond measure. At his funeral, held under the bluebells where he'd married Raina and where so many family milestones had occurred, Daniel stood to speak. My sister's husband was the best man I ever knew, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not because he was perfect, he wasn't. But because when he made a promise, he kept it. When he gave his word, it meant something. He taught me what it means to be a man of honor, what it means to rebuild yourself after you've broken, what it means to stand by the people you love, no matter what. But he looked at Raina, tears streaming down his weathered face. Cole Maddox walked into our lives when we needed him most, and he never left. He kept every promise, built a legacy, and showed us all what love looks like when it's backed by action. We won't see his like again. Raina couldn't speak through her grief, but she stood and placed a single bluebell on his casket. Their children did the same, then their grandchildren, then the community members whose lives Cole had touched through decades of quiet service. By the time they lowered him into the ground next to where her father was buried, the casket was covered in flowers. Raina lived another 8 years, long enough to see 3 great-grandchildren born. Long enough to ensure the ranch was secure for generations to come. And when she finally followed Cole into whatever comes after this life, she died with a smile on her face. Because she'd lived a life full of love and purpose. Because she'd fought for what mattered and won. Because a stranger had once heard her despair and decided to transform it into hope. Thomas Maddox, now 62 years old and still running the ranch, stood at his mother's grave and read from a letter she'd written before her death. To my children, grandchildren, and all who come after, this ranch was nearly lost once, saved by a promise made by a man who had no reason to make it. He kept that promise, and in doing so, gave us all a legacy worth preserving. So I charge you, keep the land healthy, keep the family strong, keep your promises always. And remember that the true wealth of Mercer Ridge isn't in the cattle or the buildings or the money in the bank. It's in the people who stand together through hard times, who rebuild what burns, who love fiercely and forgive generously. That's the promise your father kept. That's the legacy we leave you. Guard it well. The letter was framed and hung in the ranch house, where generations would read it and remember. Remember the woman who refused to quit. Remember the drifter who stayed. Remember that promises kept can change the world. And on warm summer evenings, when the light turns golden and the bluebells carpet the meadows, you can still feel their presence at Mercer Ridge Ranch. In the sturdy buildings and healthy cattle. In the laughter of children playing in the barn. In the way family gathers on the porch to watch the sunset and count their blessings. Some promises are meant to be broken. But the ones worth keeping, the ones made with a full heart and honored with consistent action, those become immortal. Those become legacy. And Cole Maddox's promise, made to a desperate woman on the worst day of her life, became the foundation on which generations built their dreams. He'd said he would keep every promise her brother couldn't, and he did. For the rest of his life and beyond. Because some promises don't end with death. They echo through time, inspiring everyone who hears the story to be better, to love harder, to stand firmer, to keep their word no matter the cost. That's the true legacy of Mercer Ridge Ranch. Not the land or the cattle or the money, but the promise that built it all, and the love that sustained it. Forever.